And here we go, another episode of the Anthony Wherley's podcast. And I have my best friend here with me, and that friend is Jerry Butcher.
What's up, everybody?
He decided to make a list of the top albums of each year of the 80s, since the 80s are the predominant, obviously, the big part of our youth. And I'm like, oh, I love that. And he's a big list guy. I'm a big list guy, right?
We are both big list guys.
List guys, draft guys, which... kind of giving a little...
That's coming.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Coming.
Yep. So anyway, he's a big list guy. He told me about this. And I'm like, oh, cool. And with Spotify, it's so... there's people that don't like streaming. He's old school. He has a record player. One of the cooler things about my best friend is he has a jukebox.
That's right.
Are you kidding? A jukebox? Like he's like at Pizza Hut. He also has a cigarette machine. No, actually,
I don't have a cigarette machine.
But anyway, he has a jukebox, 45s in it, whatever. So, but I'm all streaming all the time. I don't have hardly any CDs anymore. We've talked about the records, and that could be a different podcast. But with streaming, it makes it nice because you can go back and look and see what albums came out because of the internet, and you can instantaneously listen to them. He could say, hey, what about this? And you can go listen to it. I don't have to have it physically in my library or borrow it from him. So when he told me about it, I was like, I'm all in, because I listen to music all the time at work because of my job and whatever. So today, while he was over at my house eating my world famous jalapeno lime steak tacos.
They were amazing.
We, yeah.
Really, really good. Seriously.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And for him to give me a compliment, that's saying something.
Absolutely.
100%. So we decided, let's do a year. Let's do one while you're here before you go home and watch the University of Illinois basketball game with your wife. Anyway, we decided today we're going to do 82. So we're obviously not going to go in order. And we just decided let's do 82. So I've never. This is the first time doing it. We might scrap this and not release it, or it might be fire, as the kids would say, and we will share it with you. So 82. Before we get going, your feelings on 82.
So I was 10 years old. Most of that time, my memories spent in fifth grade. So, fourth, fifth grade in that era, and wasn't big into music yet. So a lot of it is retro listening to what I listened to still as I got older. Some of it I had to go back and find, just doing some research on 1982. So it's not one of those years that's super memorable for me musically, like 84 is. But this is a good place to start because this is not one of our particular favorite years, but there are some excellent albums that come out this year.
We both consider music to be so important in our childhood. It takes us back to things. I remember sitting in whatever vehicle I had, listening to The Wall with you in your driveway when we were kids. There are music takes you back, and I'm going to shoot one I'm going to shoot one of these episodes next week, or record one of them with a senior in high school who's a dear friend of mine. And we had this conversation we were talking about music. I was talking about 84 albums with him. He's a big Purple Rain guy. It's funny that the 17-year-olds are still listening to Purple Rain. And
they should be.
Yeah. And last week he was listening to Heartbeat City from the Cars. And you know how much I love the Cars, and I love that album. But what we want to do here is talk about, I remember being a sixth grader. You just said you're a fifth grader, obviously. I'm a year older. I remember one of the albums we're going to discuss, listening to it on my boombox when I was a sixth grader. And those songs, I can remember being in Mrs. Kelly's classroom and talking to someone about one of those albums.
Yep.
It's just, that's what music does. Music, we both love sports. We love the Lakers, the chords running to our microphones right now, one of them's gold and one of them's purple for a reason. Specifically, I had all the other colors to pick from, and you got yellow and I got purple. But music's different. Music takes us back to when we were kids.
Yep.
100%.
1982 is an album year, vinyl year for me, but it's also the year I got my first cassette tape. This is when I started to make that transition. So I have memories from classroom, but I don't have memories of my Walkman yet
Right.
now. And I don't have memories of driving around in the car listening to this, like originally. So there'll be some of that, but it's just going to be a little bit weird starting with 82.
Okay.
But
Yep.
it's big for us.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And Tony, I will say, Tony is a guy that listens to music all the time. He listens to music while he's doing something. I'm more of an active listener. Like, I don't like to have music playing while I'm doing something else. It distracts me from what I'm doing. I like to sit and actively listen to something. So and he listens to a lot more music than I do. And that'll probably come through in this, but.
And it's funny for me, and I'll quickly hit on it. If I'm typing out one of my long Facebook posts or whatever, I will listen to I have a playlist called writing, and I will write listening to certain things because it keeps me focused on no lyrics, no talk, whatever. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. We ranked the top 10 albums of 1982, and I'm going to let him go first. He's going to tell me his album number 10 from that. And we're going to mention a couple of songs that we consider to be the main ones that would make you want to listen to that album if you were interested in going back. And then if it's something that's not on my list, I'll comment on what I remember, and maybe I don't remember it. But anyway, we're going to go back and forth a little bit. We're trying not to make this drag on for 2 hours or nothing. But what's your number 10?
So my number 10 is Combat Rock by The Clash. And as a 10-year-old, I didn't own this album. I didn't listen to this album. This is music that I discovered later. I love the song Should I Stay or Should I Go? And I like the song Rock the Casbah a lot. Tony likes Rock the Casbah more, whereas I like Should I Stay or Should I Go?
My thing was when you gave me this challenge, I went through these albums. Like, I listened to all of them, and usually it was in the summer because it's easier for me to listen in the summer and then focus on it while I'm doing my work at school. Those two are equally great. I just remember Rockin' the Casbah. That song was just something else, different. And then, you had MTV because you lived in town. I lived in the country. I didn't have MTV. Mm-hmm. Did you have MTV? You did, right? I'm not making that up.
I didn't have it right away. I had cable.
Right. You had cable.
Some of my friends had it. I didn't get it till a little bit later. I wouldn't have had it then.
Yeah. But I mean, I can remember that video. There's an armadillo in that video. Like, that's...
Wow. That's been a while.
I know.
I used to karaoke Should I Stay or Should I Go? For some reason, and I can't sing worth a crap, but it's one of the songs that I could remotely sing. All right, what's your number 10?
My number 10, and let us qualify this. If you have a song that you absolutely love that takes you back to when you were that age, one great song on an album in my world will jump an album up into your top 10 or up further into your top 10. My number 10 is Night and Day by Joe Jackson. And it's strictly off of one thing. It's off the song Steppin' Out.
Which is a great song.
Yeah, it's one of those that every year it ends up in my Spotify top 100 songs of the year because I just love it. I listen to it over and over again. It takes me back to being a kid. And I don't even know if I loved it that much when I was a kid. But now I look back and it reminds me of, being a kid, and I love that song. The other one on there is called Breaking Us in Two. I'm not going to add that to podcast, but look that song up too. That's really good. You're number 9.
All right. Number 9 is Billy Idol's self-titled album. And a couple of songs off of there are Hot in the City and White Wedding. And I think I had the 1983 release, or when I say I think maybe Chad had it. So about the time another one of our best friends, Chad Frederick, had this album probably in 83, 84. When they re-released it, they added Dancing With Myself to it. And I remember that being on the album I listened to.
That song's so good.
I know. So there's 3 songs that are like really, really, really good by Billy Idol. And the rest of the album's not bad. Billy Idol's entertaining.
And I love Billy Idol. I am a huge Billy Idol fan. Rebel Yell is coming up, in one of our other podcasts. Is just that album is fantastic. So it didn't make mine. It made my just missed list. But definitely agree with you 100% on that being considered for the top 10. My number 9 is Hot Space from Queen. I love Freddie Mercury. Goodness gracious. The voice on that guy. On Spotify, it's a weird album because every single song of the 11 songs on it have over, from looking at my computer, there's not a song on it that has less than 3 million streams, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
It actually is. And Under Pressure.
That is one of my top 10 favorite songs of all time. I actually can't believe it's not on my list, but it came in number 14 on my extended list. So it's close.
So the thing about that album, though, is the song Body Language is fantastic. It's a one you would know if you heard it, if you were a listener of music. And then someone I work with and coach with gives me crap about a song called Cool Cat. It was in an Amazon commercial within 2023, and I don't remember it, but it is so good. I listen to it all the time. It's so funny how a song can be in a commercial and you don't remember it from when you were a kid, but when you hear it, you're like, that commercial, and it's great. Number 8 for you.
So number 8 for me is Mirage by Fleetwood Mac, and that has Gypsy on it, which is one of the greatest songs of all time, and Hold Me. And it's got some others that they released that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of, and neither is Tony, but it also has Love in Store on it.
Yeah, I would say it's funny because this is one of the few times we would have the same one at the same spot, but I have number 8 is Mirage as well. And I listed Love in Store, Gypsy, and Hold Me. Gypsy and Hold Me, those are 80s masterpiece songs. They're so good. Like, that takes you back to being a kid.
It's a great video, too. Gypsy is a great video.
Right. And then Love in Store is another one that was really good that you look that one up. But that's a good album. And Fleetwood Mac's funny. A couple summers ago, I went back to the very beginning of Fleetwood Mac before Stevie Nicks was there. And they're a weird band in terms of how much they changed from their inception to how much, of the time period that we know of them, of Dreams and, obviously the Rumors album and then this one as well. They've changed a lot over time.
Yeah, for sure. And I was never a big Fleetwood Mac fan, but I always loved Stevie Nicks. And I find that through, 15-year stretch, there's always one or two songs on every album that I really liked.
Yeah, they didn't put out one that you're like, you look at that album and you're like, there's nothing on it. Every one of them has something that takes you back to like when it was out and that you love it. So that brings us to number 7. I know we're not the same on number 7.
No. So number 7 for me is an album that's going to be difficult probably to defend, but it was one that I just listened to the crap out of it. It's Led Zeppelin's Coda, and I like every song on it, but I like almost every Led Zeppelin song ever. Right. Tony's probably a bigger Led Zeppelin fan than I am, but if one thing stands out to me, it's Bonzo's Montreux is probably one of my favorites off of there. I listened to that over and over and over. I wore that album out, and it's not considered one of the better. It usually doesn't even get listed. When people talk about Led Zeppelin albums, it doesn't even get talked about.
I think the thing about it is, and I'm not saying I'm a bigger Zeppelin fan than you, but they definitely were. They were synonymous for me in my late high school years. That album was, if I remember correctly, the songs put together after John Bonham had passed away, and then they released it.
Yes,
and it wasn't like it was an album. In Through the Outdoor was the last thing they did as a band. Bonzo's like what you were saying, what makes it great is that what I liked about it as a kid was the steel drums part of it. Mm-hmm. Wearin' and Tearin' is a good song, if I remember correctly, on it that I liked. It had another version of something that was on the first album. I can't
Quit You, Baby.
Yeah, I love that song. But anyway, I like it. I guess it wasn't, it didn't make my list, which is odd because it's Led Zeppelin and how much, it helped me win student council my senior year. Or Led Zeppelin itself, not that.
Yes.
But yeah, it has some good songs on it. It just didn't make my list, which is weird. But my number 7 is the Red Rocker Sammy Hagar. His album 3 Lock Box came out in 1982. It included the title track and a song called Remote Love that I absolutely, love. And then I like to say this a lot, but there are songs that I could argue are my favorite song of all time. And I'm not sure the song Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy is not my favorite song of all time.
That is a great song.
I really like that album. There's some others that aren't great, but again, like I said back at number 10, if it's got a song on it that I absolutely love, that takes me back to being a kid, it trumps something that might have multiple other songs on it. There's something about it. And that song, that's the first song I downloaded from iTunes in like 2004 or something, or whatever it was. And I love that album. And that song is just, it's the 80s, man. It is the 80s.
That's for sure.
Number 6 for you.
So number 6 for me is Hall & Oates H2O. And it's not an album that I owned. I would have just heard songs on the radio and watched songs on Friday night videos or night tracks, whatever. And it was just, Hall & Oates was never a band that I would have bought their album, but I had 45s. And when I look back and I'm doing this project, I'm like, holy crap, I like this album. So then you go back and listen to the album, and I'm like, I really do like this album.
So what's that number 1 song on it? What one we're going to share on this?
So for me, it's Maneater, but I know you don't like that.
Well, I'd like it, but I don't.
To me, I mean, it's the first song on the album. Like, I think we got to play it. But
yeah. Okay.
Family Man is also great. And then after that, there's a lot of songs that I think are good.
My song from that one clearly is One on One. Like, I love that song. Like, when you mentioned that, I was like, how is that even on my list? Not even on my list. I don't even know why I didn't even listen to it. But I had it on cassette. Mm-hmm. You're right about Family Man. Italian Girls is a song on that. But Maneater just got overplayed, and I love Hall & Oates. Like what you said you didn't. I mean, I do. I listen to them a lot. Daryl Hall has one of the best voices ever. Like, that guy can sing it. And I don't know. Even if it would have been something I listened to, I wouldn't have had it on there. And I love it. And it's not like you're totally right that it could be on there but One on One.
One on One's a great
song.
Song. Yeah, I should have listened. I should have listed that with those other
That's
two
the song.
because it's on par with them.
Yeah,
for sure.
My number 6 is the Toto album, number 4. Everybody knows one of the songs on this. That's the song Africa. Africa, that's a billion listen song. Mm-hmm. That's a song that became, it was already great. It was covered, and that made it more, accessible. But that's probably the most recognizable song on the album.
I will say this. If you want to do a different experience, look up Leapfrog Studios on YouTube and listen to their cover of Africa. It's a heavy metal cover, and it's awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
I never heard that. I'll have to check that out. But Rosanna, if you're my age, Rosanna, that song, you hear it, it takes you back. I Won't Hold You Back would be the next in that. There's a song called Good For You that I don't think it was as big as a hit, but I do remember it. And then the one that stands out to me, and I played this for Jerry earlier when we were getting into the steak tacos, Make Believe. I love that song. That song is something else. It's one of those you forgot. I love the songs that you forget, and then when you hear it, you're like, how did I forget that song? How did I forget it? So Toto Toto's 4 is my number 6.
Toto 4 should have been 4, but whatever. So anyway, not a huge Toto fan, but I do like those songs.
What is your number 5?
So my number 5 is Sacrilegious, and we've already talked about it, but my number 5 is Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Ridiculous.
And I'm not going to talk about it right now because it's on Tony's list higher, and we'll get it deeper into it then. What's your number 5?
My number 5, your sisters would be proud of my number 5. My number 5 is Rio from Duran Duran. I don't know what your not you, Jerry's thoughts, but I don't know you listening to this at home. I don't know what your thoughts are of Duran Duran, but you know what Duran Duran is? They're legends. They're absolute 80s legends. They just destroyed the 80s. They played the game in the 80s with videos and albums, maybe as good as anybody.
Probably
did.
Better than anybody.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
Yep.
They legitimately killed the 80s with their videos and their music. And Rio, what Rio gives you is Rio gives you the title track. It gives you Hungry Like a Wolf. Like that is the 80s in a song. New Religion, The Chauffeur, and Save a Prayer.
Which is one of my favorites,
Yeah,
Save a Prayer.
Just classic.
And unbelievable videos.
So, I mean, I know, like I said, your sisters, you have 2 sisters, Kelly and Donna. They loved Duran Duran, and you know what? I love Duran Duran too.
Well, let's just go right into my number 4 because it's Rio by Duran Duran. So I had Duran Duran played into the ground for me because my sisters were nuts for Duran Duran. And so if anybody ever had them overplayed and could possibly hate them, it would be me. But I never loved them in the 80s because it was a girly thing to me, and it was not okay to like them like that. But later in life, I realized how much, there's 20 Duran Duran songs that I could name off the top of my head, and I love every one of them. So, and this album is a great one.
Yeah, they let's dance around it in 2024. But when we were kids, you weren't as cool if you were listening to this, that, or the other thing.
And my sisters would be proud of me because I put it ahead of Thriller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but Tony didn't.
You'll get extra Christmas presents or birthday presents or something. So I just love so much music from them. They were definitely a huge part of the 80s. So that was your number 4, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my number 4, and we have to qualify this because we had this discussion earlier because my number 4 wasn't even on his list. I was the king of buying a cassette and not listening to all of it. I listened to the songs I liked, and I would rewind and fast forward and rewind and fast. There were so few things I ever listened to all of it, and this is one of them. My number 4 is Rick Springfield's second album, Success Hasn't Spoiled Me Yet. I bought it at the Galesburg Mall. I remember bringing it home with my mom and dad and listening to it in my tape player, not my boom box, my tape player that I actually have upstairs. Nostalgia. It is, I loved it. I mean, you name it, I can see its album cover in my head. And obviously, most people would know it for Don't Talk to Strangers. I Get Excited wasn't a hit. What Kind of Fool Am I? That was on the greatest, because you always go off of greatest hits. Like if you look at Rick Springfield's greatest hits album, Don't Talk to Strangers, What Kind of Fool Am I on it. But there were other songs that I listened to because I actually gave that whole album a chance that are really pretty good. How Do I Talk to Girls? If you're wanting to listen, Still Crazy for You. The American Girl, Just One Kiss. Those are songs that if you're listening to this, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But that album, because I owned it, I knew them.
So I would say this album's in my top 20 from that year, but it's not in my top 10. And I don't know why I didn't even have it listed. But when we talked about it today and listened to some of it, I stand corrected. It's definitely higher than not making my short list.
The funny thing is my friend Amy and I loved Rick Springfield. Like We listened to this one. We listened to Human Touch, which came up after that. What was the one? Oh gosh, had the song "State of the Heart." That was when I graduated from the 8th grade. I had that 45.
Yeah.
I might be able to put that in your jukebox. I
Yeah.
might have that at my mom's.
I've got a Rick Springfield song in my
Yeah.
jukebox.
But anyway, he was a person that my friend Amy and I really loved, and that
Well,
moves him up my list to number 4.
My sisters were big fans of his too, but they were also General Hospital watchers, which made me and Joe General Hospital watchers by default because you had 4 channels then, and you were watching what everybody else was. And we got into it, and he was Dr. Noah Drake, if I remember right, before he became a rock or a pop star. So we were fans of him. So let's go to my number 3.
What is it?
Okay, so this one, you're not going to believe I put it ahead of Thriller, but this is personal choice. Billy Squier's Emotions in Motion is just an all-time favorite album of mine that would not be on most people's list. Here's some songs that you need to listen to. Everybody Wants You, Emotions in Motion. Those are the first 2 songs. And it comes out with 2 really, really good ones. And the 4th song on there, which was never released, but is one of my all-time favorite love songs, is called In Your Eyes.
I love Billy Squier. I got to say that right off the bat. Billy Squier is he's 80s personified. Love his music. We had this discussion just the other day about Billy Squier. And the end of the day with my 17-year-old friend who's a big 80s person. Everybody Wants You, great 80s song. Emotions, good. But it didn't make my list. I ranked mine based on how many out of how many. And on that one, I gave it a 3 out of 10 based on those 3 songs, or those 2 that I mentioned. And there's a song called She's a Runner, which I don't really know, but I had that written down that was one of them that caught my attention. So Billy Squier, good stuff. My number 3 is John Cougar, American Fool.
And we'll talk about that one in a minute.
Right. Foreshadowing, I think Mrs. Knowles taught.
Yes.
Foreshadowing.
Use your prediction skills.
Yes. We're going to predict that might be higher on your list. But American Fool from John Cougar is my number 3.
Okay, so my number 2, and these 2, my top 2, are far and away above the others on my list. So my number 2 is 1999 by Prince. And I'm a huge Purple Rain fan. And that album's one of my favorite albums, if not my favorite album of all time. This is my second favorite Prince album. And everybody's heard 1999. Little Red Corvette, I hope, is the one we're going to play because it doesn't get as much airtime as 1999. And I think Little Red Corvette is the best song of all time. So beyond that, you have Delirious, Let's Pretend We're Married, Dance Music, Sex, Romance, and we're just talking about the stuff that's released. And the rest of it, there's like 6 more songs, and I like at least 3 of the 6.
When we were listening to this earlier before we ate, it was like, I think what I like to do is I love to look at an album on Spotify, obviously, because I work for them, and I actually don't.
Sponsored by them.
I actually don't. But, we looked at it and we were like 1 for 1, 2 for 2, 3 for 3, 4 for 4, 5 for 5, 6 for 6. You went the first 6 songs on 1999, and there's no way you wouldn't put them on your favorite songs of 1982 list.
Wouldn't skip a single one of them.
A question. There's no way.
At any time.
At any time. There's, if you were making a list of your favorite songs from 82, top 6 songs on that automatically. 7, no. 8, half. 9, absolutely on the list. 10, no. 11. So out of 11, you think there's 3 that you don't want. I couldn't agree more. And Little Red Corvette is just simply iconic. Nobody that grew up in the time that we grew up doesn't automatically recognize that song as being at least one that was popular, whether you like it or don't like it. When I think of that album, I really like DMSR. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you mentioned it. Automatic is great too. And then Let's Pretend We're Married only cracks me up because there were kids that got away with playing that out loud in art class, as raunchy as it was. I don't know how our art teacher didn't hear it. I remember sitting there thinking, I cannot believe they're playing.
So
this song.
is that your number 2, 1999?
It is my number 2.
Well, I went and saw the Morris Day and the Time this last year with Chad and Eric and a couple other guys, and he did a cover of DMSR, which was awesome.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, I mean, and this was the first cassette I ever bought. I don't know why I switched from album to cassette, because I didn't even have a cassette player at the time. I was listening to it on a little handheld recorder, but we couldn't believe the amount of cussing that was on it. Like, we thought we were getting away with something.
Right.
Like we had found Dad's Playboy in the sock drawer,
Right.
and we were off listening to it like, oh my God, this is unreal.
Yeah. He definitely pushed the limits when we were kids, definitely.
And I'm going to throw one more thing in. If you're going to look up Little Red Corvette and listen to it, go on YouTube and look for the extended version. I've got a 12-inch version of it. It's like 8 minutes long, but it's so much better. It's so much better than the original song even.
He is arguably he's the GOAT.
He is.
The fact that he, played all of his own instruments, he could play everything. He put his first album out at 19, played every instrument, recorded in his basement. I don't know. You can say whatever you want about whatever with him, but as a musician, the GOAT.
Absolutely.
Arguably the GOAT.
I agree.
So, okay, so is that number 2?
That's number 2. So how in the heck is that not number 1 for me?
So we both have that as number 2.
As number 2.
Okay. So
now you know what my number 1 is.
So we know what your number 1 is. We know what my number 1 is. Since it's my podcast, you can go first. What's your number 1?
So mine is American Fool by John Cougar. It gets number 1 ahead of 1999 because of listening to it at the time. I can remember being in 5th grade in class, listening to this in Mrs. Jackson's class, listening to Hurt So Good over and over again, thinking, how does Miss Jackson not hear the lyrics to this song? I can't believe she's letting us listen to this. But my favorite song off of there, everybody loves Jack and Diane, and I do too. But my favorite is Danger List. And that says something of, because how much I love those first 2 I mentioned, plus China Girl, plus Hand to Hold On To. And then there's a couple more that are pretty decent. There's only probably 2 that I wouldn't listen to, that I would skip over.
So you're saying Danger List is your song on there?
I would say now, yes.
Okay.
I would say it didn't used to be, but it is now.
The funny thing is we listened to these earlier, and you do this thing where you go 1 for 1, or 2 for 2, 3 for 3, blah, blah, blah. Well, this one punches you in the face with Hurt So Good. Then, oh, by the way, here's Jack and Diane.
Yeah, just only a theme song for a generation.
Right, yeah. So here's this. But I'm going to go Hand to Hold On To.
Which, if you haven't heard,
right.
Oh my God.
And that song is great. And I never owned this or on album or a cassette. And then a few years ago, I find China Girl. And China Girl ends up on my end of the year top 100 list because it's just such a good song. If you've never listened to China Girl from John Cougar, you got to give it a listen. Just a really, it is. It's a great album. It was my number 3. So I mean, it's just funny. We've got the same two of the same in the top 3. My number 1 is. It's Thriller. I don't know how it's not. I don't know how Thriller isn't the number 1 album of 1982. I had a Michael Jackson Thriller t-shirt. It was a muscle shirt. You bought it that way. I didn't cut the sleeves off. They were pre-cut off.
Wow.
Because nothing says muscles.
Nothing says I'm a man like a sleeveless Michael Jackson t-shirt.
Yeah,
shirt.
nothing.
Obviously not a
and
t-shirt.
I wore it to the football game in Avon.
Got
first
beat
game of
up.
the year. Yeah.
Yep.
And
Got the
we
crap
lost,
kicked out of
right,
him.
Yes, I probably did.
Yep.
That
Probably
being
blood.
said, the kids from Avon maybe didn't appreciate Michael
Jimmy
Jackson
Bivens.
like we
Jimmy
did.
Bivens hated
Didn't-
Michael
didn't
Jackson.
appreciate Michael Jackson like we did in TG. But I don't know. I just, we didn't talk about it when you had it on your list at what, 6?
5.
5? We'll talk about it on mine. Wanna Be Starting Something. That's the first song on the album. Just lights out. This is one of those albums, again, it's a repeat. Number 1, 1 for 1, 2 for 2, Baby Be Mine, 3 for 3, The Girl Is Mine, with the Paul McCartney on it. Mm-hmm. Number 4, Thriller, iconic. How many Palms routines have there been to Thriller? Number 4, Beat It. You got Eddie Van Halen on it. Get Out. Billie Jean. Jean, you can see the video. Close your eyes. You see him walking across that and lighting the things he's stepping on.
One of the greatest songs of all time.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Human Nature, kills it. PYT, Pretty Young Thing, kills it. For me, you get to number 9, The Lady in My Life. But I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Give me Human Nature, give me PYT, give me Wanna Be Starting Something. I'm not sure I don't like those, all 3 of those, more than Beat It and Billie Jean and Thriller. Because if those are the 6, like if I had to rate the 6, I would rather listen to Human Nature, PYT, and Wanna Be Starting Something. And by the way, here's Wanna Be Starting Something right now.
Where's The Girl Is Mine at on this album?
Number 3.
Number 3. So he released 7 songs off of this album that were all hits.
Right.
I don't know which ones all went to number 1, but I remember I couldn't. Everybody released 1 or 2 songs off an album, maybe 3 if it was a big album. Up until that point in my life.
Yeah.
So for him to release 7, and it just kept releasing. I mean, like that album stayed on the charts and relevant for so long. It was crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, they made a movie. They made a movie about Thriller, the song. Like I remember we rented it from Gamage Video in Macomb. Mm-hmm. They made a video. They made a movie about it.
It was an event when that video got released. Like everybody was waiting for that. That was the last one to be released, and everybody couldn't wait to see what that video was.
And then he performed at the Apollo, and the first time he moonwalked.
Yep.
That was like involved. It was at the same time period. And again, whether you like him or don't like him, whatever, it was unbelievable what he did in that time frame, especially when I was 11 years old. Just unreal. And to be honest, whether it's that much better than some of the others, but that's definitely an iconic album, and it's something that defines 1982.
The reason why it's not higher on my list, if you ask me out of those albums, which would you rather listen to right now, I would pick all the ones I had ahead of it before it.
Yeah.
And I'm not denying that it's a great album, but for me, I'm just not a huge Michael Jackson fan.
And I think that's what makes this fun. And if you're listening to this and you're my friend on Facebook, hey, comment. Let me know what you think. What are your top? What did we miss? How are we crazy? You're probably wrong.
Yeah, what's Tony wrong about? Exactly.
Right. Or
why you agree with everything I said.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Please comment on that. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was a little bit of a trip down memory lane if you like 82 like we, or if you grew up in the 80s like us, or like we said, one of my favorite people that I talk to on a daily basis is 17 years old, and he's listening to what I was listening to when I was a little kid, which just proves the 80s music is just masterpieces.
Absolutely.
Masterpieces after masterpieces. So
we were blessed. We had a blessed childhood.
Grow up in that time period and
Yep.
listen to that music. So thanks again to my best friend for sitting in on this. Don't worry. We're going to do it again.
Thanks for having me. See you next time.
Yep. We will be back soon. Remember, life is good. Go listen to some 82 music.